The sun was getting ready to hide behind the mountains when Samuel Mitchell pulled on the reins of his horse. Thunder stopped walking and shook his brown head. Dust flew everywhere. Samuel wiped the sweat from his face with his old hat. He had been riding for 12 hours straight across the hot Arizona desert. Samuel was 32 years old. He was not a rich man. He was not a famous man. He was just a simple trader who moved goods from one town to another. His clothes were dusty and torn in some places. His boots had holes in them. But Samuel never complained about his hard life. Thunder was Samuel's best friend in the whole world. The horse was 7 years old and very smart. Samuel had bought Thunder 3 years ago from an old farmer who needed money. Thunder was not the prettiest horse anyone had ever seen. His brown coat was rough and his left ear had a small cut from an old fight with a wild dog. But Thunder was strong and loyal. He never got tired easily, and he always took Samuel where he needed to go. Samuel looked at the small bag tied to his saddle. Inside the bag were all his worldly possessions. He had some dried meat for eating. He had a water bottle that was almost empty. He had some tobacco to trade with people. He had a few tools and some cloth. Most importantly, he had $17.50. This was all the money Samuel had in the world. The desert around Samuel and Thunder was quiet and empty. There were big rocks everywhere. Some small bushes grew here and there, but most of the land was just dirt and sand. Samuel had been traveling this same path for 2 years. He knew it was safe during the day, but dangerous at night. Wild animals came out when the sun went down. Sometimes bad men hid behind the rocks to rob travelers. Samuel was traveling from the town of Prescott to the town of Tucson. He had sold some goods in Prescott and now he was taking new goods to Tucson. The trip usually took 4 days if the weather was good. But Samuel had started 2 days late because he had been sick with a fever. Now he was rushing to make up for lost time. As Thunder walked slowly forward, Samuel thought about his life. He had no wife and no children. His parents had died when he was young. He had no brothers or sisters. Trading was the only work he knew how to do. Sometimes Samuel felt lonely, but he never felt sorry for himself. He believed that every person had their own path in life. The sky was turning orange and purple when Samuel saw something strange. Far ahead, in a small valley, he could see smoke rising into the air. Samuel had traveled this path many times, but he had never seen any smoke in that valley before. He knew that no white settlers lived in that area. Samuel felt curious, but also a little scared. He had heard stories about Apache Indians in this part of Arizona. Some people said the Apache were dangerous and would attack any white man they found. Other people said the Apache were peaceful if you treated them with respect. Samuel had never met any Apache people before, so he did not know what to believe. Thunder seemed to sense Samuel's nervousness. The horse stopped walking and made a soft sound. Samuel patted Thunder's neck gently. "What do you think, old friend?" Samuel said quietly. "Should we go see who's making that fire, or should we go around the valley?" Samuel looked at the sky. The sun would be gone in less than an hour. Soon it would be very dark and very cold. Samuel knew he needed to find a place to sleep for the night. He could make his own camp in the rocks, but that would be dangerous. Wild animals might find him. Bad men might find him too. The smoke in the valley looked peaceful. It was not a big fire like an army would make. It was not a dangerous fire like outlaws might make. It was just a small cooking fire like one person might make for dinner. Samuel made his decision. He would go toward the smoke. If the people by the fire were friendly, he would ask if he could share their camp for the night. If they were not friendly, he would ride away as fast as Thunder could run. "Come on, Thunder," Samuel said. "Let us go meet whoever is down there. Maybe they will be kind to 2 tired travelers." Thunder began walking down the rocky path toward the valley. Samuel kept his hand near his gun, but he did not take it out. He wanted to show that he came in peace. As they got closer to the smoke, Samuel could see that it was coming from a very small fire. He could not see any people yet. The valley was quiet except for the sound of Thunder's hooves on the rocks. Samuel's heart was beating fast. He did not know what he would find when he reached the fire. Would there be many people or just one person? Would they speak English or only Apache? Would they welcome him or tell him to go away? Thunder walked carefully down the steep path. Samuel held the reins loosely and let his horse choose each step. Thunder was very good at walking on difficult ground. Samuel trusted his horse completely. As they got closer, Samuel began to smell the smoke from the fire. It smelled like burning wood and maybe some cooking food. Samuel's stomach made a noise because he was hungry. He had not eaten anything since early morning. The path curved around a big rock, and suddenly Samuel could see the fire clearly. Next to the fire sat one person. It was a young man who looked like he might be Apache. The young man was alone. He had no horse that Samuel could see. The young man looked up when he heard Thunder approaching. Samuel and Thunder stopped walking. Samuel and the young Apache man looked at each other across the small distance. Neither of them moved or spoke. Samuel wondered what would happen next. This meeting would change both of their lives forever, but Samuel did not know that yet. Samuel sat on Thunder and stared at the young Apache man by the fire. The young man stared back at Samuel. For a long moment, neither of them moved or said anything. The only sounds were the crackling of the small fire and Thunder breathing heavily after the long day of travel. The young Apache looked to be about 16 years old. He had long black hair that was tied back with a piece of leather. His skin was dark from many days in the desert sun. He wore simple clothes made from animal hide and cloth. His moccasins were worn and had holes in them. Around his neck hung a small leather pouch. Samuel could see that the young man was tired and worried about something. His shoulders were bent forward like he was carrying a heavy load. His eyes looked sad and frightened. There was no smile on his face when he looked at Samuel. Samuel slowly climbed down from Thunder. He wanted to show the young Apache that he was not dangerous. Samuel kept his hands away from his gun. He took off his hat and held it in front of him. This was a sign of respect that most people understood. "Hello," Samuel said in a quiet voice. "I am Samuel. I saw your fire and I was hoping I could share your camp tonight." The young Apache man tilted his head like he was trying to understand Samuel's words. He said something in Apache language that Samuel could not understand. Then the young man pointed to himself and said, "Running Wolf," in broken English. Samuel smiled and nodded. "Running Wolf," he repeated. "That is a good name." Running Wolf stood up slowly. Samuel could see that the young man was very thin. He looked like he had not eaten much food in several days. Running Wolf pointed to the fire and then pointed to the ground next to it. He was inviting Samuel to sit by the fire. Samuel felt relieved. Running Wolf seemed friendly and peaceful. Samuel led Thunder to a small bush where the horse could eat some grass. Then Samuel sat down by the fire across from Running Wolf. The fire was very small and did not give much warmth. Samuel could see that Running Wolf did not have much wood to burn. There were only a few small sticks left in a pile near the fire. Samuel looked around and saw some dried branches near the rocks. He got up and gathered more wood for the fire. Running Wolf watched Samuel collect the wood. When Samuel came back and put the wood on the fire, it blazed up brighter and warmer. Running Wolf smiled for the first time. He said thank you in English. Samuel opened his bag and took out some dried meat. He offered half of it to Running Wolf. The young Apache man looked at the meat hungrily, but he shook his head. He did not want to take Samuel's food. "Please," Samuel said. "I have enough for both of us." Samuel put the meat on a flat rock between them. Running Wolf looked at Samuel for a long moment. Then he took a small piece of the meat and ate it slowly. Samuel could see how hungry Running Wolf was by the way he ate. The young man had not had good food in a long time. As they ate, Samuel tried to talk to Running Wolf. It was difficult because Running Wolf only knew a few words in English, and Samuel knew no Apache words at all. But slowly, using hand signals and simple words, they began to understand each other. Running Wolf pointed to himself and then made a gesture like he was riding a horse. Then he made a sad face and pointed to the ground. Samuel understood that Running Wolf had lost his horse somehow. Samuel pointed to Running Wolf and then pointed in different directions. He was asking where Running Wolf was trying to go. Running Wolf pointed toward the mountains in the distance. He held up 3 fingers and made a gesture like the sun rising and setting. Samuel understood that Running Wolf needed to travel 3 days toward the mountains. Running Wolf then put his hand over his heart and made a sad face. He said a few words in Apache and then said grandmother in English. Samuel understood that Running Wolf was worried about his grandmother. Samuel pointed to Running Wolf's grandmother and made a questioning face. Running Wolf touched his stomach and made a pain face. Then he lay down and closed his eyes like someone who was very sick. Samuel realized that Running Wolf's grandmother was ill and needed help. Running Wolf stood up and walked to the edge of their small camp. He pointed toward the mountains again and held up his hands like he was asking the sky for help. Samuel could see that Running Wolf was very worried and felt hopeless. Samuel felt sorry for the young Apache man. Running Wolf was trying to reach his sick grandmother, but he had no horse to ride. Walking to the mountains would take many days. By the time Running Wolf got there, it might be too late to help his grandmother. Running Wolf came back to the fire and sat down. He reached into his small leather pouch and pulled out something. It was $1 silver. Running Wolf held the dollar in his palm and looked at it sadly. He said some words in Apache and then said only money in English. Samuel understood that this $1 was all the money Running Wolf had in the world. The young man was as poor as anyone could be, but Samuel could see that Running Wolf would give anything to reach his grandmother in time. The night was getting colder and darker. Samuel and Running Wolf sat by the fire and looked at each other. Samuel was thinking about Running Wolf's problem. There had to be some way to help this young man reach his grandmother. Samuel looked over at Thunder, who was eating grass peacefully. Thunder was strong and fast. Thunder could carry Running Wolf to the mountains in 2 days instead of many days of walking. But Thunder was Samuel's only horse. Without Thunder, Samuel would be stuck in the desert. Samuel looked back at Running Wolf, who was staring sadly at his $1 silver. The young Apache man looked so hopeless and worried. Samuel made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He did not know it yet, but his next words would bring him great fortune. Sometimes the most generous acts bring the most unexpected rewards. Samuel stared at the $1 silver in Running Wolf's hand. The firelight made the coin shine and sparkle. Samuel knew that this single dollar was everything Running Wolf owned in the world. The young Apache man looked at the dollar with such sadness that Samuel felt his heart break a little. Samuel turned his head to look at Thunder. His faithful horse was still eating grass near the bushes. Thunder's brown coat looked almost black in the darkness. Samuel had owned Thunder for 3 years, and they had traveled thousands of miles together. Thunder had carried Samuel through terrible storms and blazing hot desert days. Thunder had never let Samuel down. Samuel thought about his own situation. He had $17.50 to his name. He needed Thunder to continue his journey to Tucson. Without Thunder, Samuel would have to walk across the dangerous desert carrying his heavy pack. It would take him many days, and he might not survive the trip. But when Samuel looked back at Running Wolf, he saw something that changed his mind. The young Apache man was quietly crying. Tears were rolling down his face as he stared at the dollar. Running Wolf was trying not to make any sound, but Samuel could see his shoulders shaking. Running Wolf whispered something in Apache language. Even though Samuel could not understand the words, he could hear the pain in Running Wolf's voice. The young man was probably praying for his grandmother or asking the spirits to help him find a way to reach her in time. Samuel had grown up poor and alone. He knew what it felt like to have no money and no family to help. He knew what it felt like to feel hopeless and scared. But Samuel had never felt the kind of desperate worry that Running Wolf was feeling now. Running Wolf might lose his grandmother forever if he could not reach her soon. Samuel made his decision. He stood up slowly and walked over to where Thunder was eating. Samuel patted his horse's neck gently. Thunder lifted his head and looked at Samuel with his big brown eyes. Samuel could swear that Thunder understood what was about to happen. "I am sorry, old friend," Samuel whispered to Thunder. "I am about to do something that will change both our lives. I hope you will forgive me." Samuel walked back to the fire where Running Wolf was still sitting with his head down. Samuel sat across from the young Apache man and waited until Running Wolf looked up at him. "Running Wolf," Samuel said slowly and clearly, "I want to help you." Running Wolf tilted his head and looked confused. He did not understand what Samuel meant. Samuel pointed to Thunder and then pointed to Running Wolf. Then Samuel held out his hand like he wanted Running Wolf to give him something. Running Wolf looked even more confused. Samuel tried again. He pointed to Thunder and said, "Horse." Then he pointed to Running Wolf's dollar and said, "Money." Then Samuel made a gesture like he was trading one thing for another. Running Wolf's eyes grew very wide. He stared at Samuel like he could not believe what he was hearing. Running Wolf shook his head quickly and said, "No, no, no," in English, but Samuel nodded his head and smiled. "Yes," he said, "I will sell you my horse for your dollar." Running Wolf jumped to his feet and backed away from the fire. He said many words in Apache very quickly. Samuel could not understand the words, but he could tell that Running Wolf was shocked and upset. Running Wolf came back to the fire and knelt down in front of Samuel. He took Samuel's hands in his own hands and looked directly into Samuel's eyes. Running Wolf spoke in Apache and then tried to say it in English. "Too much," Running Wolf said. "Horse worth many dollars. I have only $1. Not fair trade." Samuel smiled and squeezed Running Wolf's hands. "Sometimes life is not about fair trade," Samuel said. Sometimes life is about helping people who need help. Running Wolf started crying again, but these were different tears. These were tears of gratitude and amazement. Running Wolf had never met anyone who would make such a generous offer to a stranger. Why? Running Wolf asked in broken English. Why you help me? Samuel looked at the young Apache man and thought about his answer. Why was he willing to give up his horse and risk his own safety to help someone he had just met? Samuel was not sure he could explain it in words that Running Wolf would understand. Your grandmother is sick, Samuel said slowly. Family is the most important thing in the world. You need to be with her. I have no family, but I understand that family love is sacred. Running Wolf listened carefully to every word Samuel said. Even though some of the words were difficult for him to understand, he could feel the kindness and sincerity in Samuel's voice. Running Wolf stood up and walked around the fire to where Samuel was sitting. The young Apache man knelt down beside Samuel and placed the silver dollar in Samuel's palm. Then Running Wolf closed Samuel's fingers around the coin. I take horse, Running Wolf said, but this not enough payment for such kindness. My people will know what you did for me. My people have good memory for kindness. Running Wolf reached into his leather pouch and pulled out something else. It was a small stone carved into the shape of a wolf. The carving was very old and looked like it had been made by skilled hands many years ago. Running Wolf pressed the carved wolf into Samuel's other hand. This belonged to my grandfather, Running Wolf said. He was great medicine man. He said this stone bring good fortune to person who does good deeds. Samuel looked at the small carved wolf. It was smooth and warm from being carried close to Running Wolf's body. Samuel could feel that this stone was very precious to Running Wolf and his family. I cannot take something so important to you, Samuel said, but Running Wolf shook his head firmly. You give me chance to see grandmother before she die. This stone is small payment for such great gift. You keep it and remember Running Wolf. Samuel felt tears in his own eyes now. He had never received such a meaningful gift from anyone. He carefully put the carved wolf and the silver dollar into his pocket. Running Wolf walked over to Thunder and began talking to the horse in Apache language. Thunder seemed to understand that he was getting a new owner. The horse stood very still while Running Wolf checked his saddle and bridle. Samuel gathered his few belongings and put them in his pack. He would have to carry everything on his back now, but he did not mind. Helping Running Wolf reach his grandmother felt more important than his own comfort. As Running Wolf prepared to mount Thunder, he turned back to Samuel one more time. The young Apache man's face was serious and full of respect. Samuel, Running Wolf said carefully, my people will not forget this kindness. Someday we will repay this debt. Samuel waved his hand dismissively. There is no debt between friends, he said. Just go quickly to your grandmother and tell her that a friend helped you get there. Running Wolf climbed onto Thunder's back. Samuel could see that Running Wolf was a skilled rider even though he was young. Thunder seemed to accept his new rider without any problem. Thank you, Samuel Mitchell, Running Wolf said. I will never forget you. And with those words, Running Wolf rode Thunder out of the firelight and into the dark desert night. Samuel watched until he could no longer see them. Then he sat back down by the dying fire and wondered what he had just done to his own life. Samuel woke up as the first rays of sunlight touched his face. The fire had died during the night and only cold ashes remained. Samuel felt stiff and sore from sleeping on the hard ground without proper blankets. He sat up slowly and looked around the empty camp. For a moment, Samuel forgot what had happened the night before. He looked around expecting to see Thunder eating grass nearby. Then the memory came flooding back. Thunder was gone. Running Wolf was gone. Samuel was alone in the desert with only his feet to carry him. Samuel stood up and stretched his aching muscles. He picked up his heavy pack and put it on his shoulders. The pack felt much heavier now that he would have to carry it instead of letting Thunder carry it. Samuel had clothes, trading goods, tools, and food in the pack. Everything he owned was now on his back. Samuel looked at the path that led out of the valley. It was a long, rocky trail that wound up through the hills toward the main desert. Samuel knew that Tucson was still 3 days away if he had been riding Thunder. On foot, the journey would take at least a week, maybe longer. Samuel began walking as the sun rose higher in the sky. Each step was difficult because the path was steep and covered with loose rocks. Samuel had to be very careful not to slip and fall. A broken leg in the desert would mean certain death. After 2 hours of climbing, Samuel reached the top of the hills. He stopped to rest and drink some water from his bottle. Below him, he could see the valley where he had met Running Wolf. Above him stretched miles and miles of empty desert. The sun was already getting hot even though it was still morning. Samuel continued walking across the flat desert. The sand and dirt reflected the heat upward, making Samuel feel like he was walking inside an oven. His shirt became soaked with sweat. His feet began to hurt inside his worn boots. But Samuel did not complain. He knew that he had made the right choice by helping Running Wolf. As Samuel walked, he thought about the carved wolf stone in his pocket. He took it out several times to look at it. The stone was smooth and cool even in the hot sun. Samuel wondered about Running Wolf's grandfather who had carved it. Samuel wondered if the stone really could bring good fortune like Running Wolf had said. By noon, the heat was unbearable. Samuel found a large rock that cast a small shadow and sat down to rest. He ate some dried meat and drank more water. Samuel was worried about his water supply. He only had enough water for 2 days, but he was still 4 or 5 days away from Tucson. Samuel tried to think of places along the trail where he might find water. There was a small stream about 2 days ahead, but Samuel was not sure if it would have water this time of year. Sometimes desert streams dried up completely in the hot months. After resting for an hour, Samuel continued walking. The afternoon sun was even hotter than the morning sun. Samuel's pack felt like it weighed 100 pounds. His shoulders ached and his back was sore. But Samuel kept putting one foot in front of the other. As the sun began to set, Samuel heard something that made him stop walking. It was the sound of horses moving across the desert. The sound was coming from behind him. Samuel turned around and saw dust clouds in the distance. Someone was riding toward him very fast. Samuel felt nervous. He was alone and defenseless in the middle of nowhere. If the riders were outlaws or bandits, Samuel would have no way to escape. He looked around for a place to hide, but there were only small bushes and rocks. Nothing big enough to hide behind. The sound of horses got louder and closer. Samuel could see that there were several riders coming toward him. They were riding Apache ponies, and the riders looked like Apache warriors. Samuel's heart began beating very fast. Samuel thought about running, but he knew he could not outrun horses. He thought about fighting, but he was outnumbered and tired. Samuel decided to stand still and wait to see what the Apache warriors wanted. The group of riders approached Samuel and formed a circle around him. Samuel counted 6 warriors, all mounted on fast ponies. The warriors wore traditional Apache clothing and had painted faces. They looked serious and dangerous. The leader of the group was an older man with gray hair and many wrinkles on his face. He had scars on his arms that showed he had been in many battles. This man rode his pony closer to Samuel and looked down at him with dark, intelligent eyes. Samuel tried to stay calm even though he was very frightened. He had heard many stories about what happened to white men who were captured by Apache warriors. Some of the stories were terrible, but Samuel remembered that Running Wolf had been kind and peaceful. Maybe these warriors would be kind too. The older warrior said something in Apache to the other men. Then he looked back at Samuel and spoke in broken English. "You are Samuel Mitchell," the warrior said. It was not a question. It was a statement. Samuel was surprised that the warrior knew his name. Samuel nodded slowly and said, "Yes, I am Samuel Mitchell." The warrior smiled slightly and said, "We have been looking for you, Samuel Mitchell." Samuel felt confused and worried. Why would Apache warriors be looking for him? Had he done something wrong by helping Running Wolf? Maybe the Apache were angry that a white man had interfered in their business. "Why are you looking for me?" Samuel asked carefully. The older warrior climbed down from his pony and stood in front of Samuel. The warrior was shorter than Samuel, but he looked very strong and tough. His eyes were kind but also very serious. "My name is Chief Standing Bear," the warrior said. "Running Wolf is my brother's son. He told us what you did for him." Samuel felt a little relief. If Running Wolf had told them about the horse trade, then maybe the warriors were not angry with him. But Samuel was still not sure why they had come looking for him. "Running Wolf told us that you gave him your horse for $1, Chief Standing Bear continued. "He told us that you did this so he could reach his grandmother before she died." Samuel nodded. "Yes, that is true. I wanted to help him." Chief Standing Bear studied Samuel's face for a long moment. The other warriors remained silent on their ponies. Samuel could feel all of them watching him closely. "Running Wolf reached his grandmother yesterday evening," Chief Standing Bear said. "She died peacefully in the night with Running Wolf holding her hand. Because of your kindness, she was not alone when she passed to the spirit world." Samuel felt tears in his eyes. He was sad that Running Wolf's grandmother had died, but he was glad that Running Wolf had been able to say goodbye to her. "I am sorry for your loss," Samuel said, "but I am happy that Running Wolf was able to be with her." Chief Standing Bear nodded slowly. "You are a good man, Samuel Mitchell. What you did for Running Wolf was sacred. In Apache tradition, when someone shows such kindness to our family, they become family." Samuel did not understand what Chief Standing Bear meant. How could he become family to people he had never met before? Chief Standing Bear walked closer to Samuel and placed his hand on Samuel's shoulder. "You are no longer a stranger to the Apache people," the chief said. "You are our brother, and we take care of our brothers." Samuel looked around at the other warriors. They were all nodding and smiling now. The dangerous feeling was gone. These men were not his enemies. They were his friends. "We have come to take you home," Chief Standing Bear said. "No brother of the Apache walks alone in the desert." Chief Standing Bear walked to one of his warriors and said something in Apache language. The warrior climbed down from his pony and handed the reins to Chief Standing Bear. The chief led the pony over to Samuel. "This horse is yours now," Chief Standing Bear said. "A brother of the Apache does not walk in the desert." Samuel looked at the pony. It was a beautiful animal with white and brown spots on its coat. The pony looked strong and well cared for. Samuel had never owned such a fine horse before. "I cannot take your horse," Samuel said. "You have already done too much by coming to find me." Chief Standing Bear shook his head firmly. "In Apache culture, when someone saves the life of our family, we must repay that kindness. You helped Running Wolf reach his grandmother in her final hours. This is a sacred gift that cannot be repaid with simple thanks." Samuel felt overwhelmed by the chief's generosity. These people barely knew him, but they were treating him like he was their own family member. Chief Standing Bear helped Samuel put his heavy pack on the pony's back. Then he showed Samuel how to mount the Apache pony. The horse was smaller than Thunder, but it felt strong and sure-footed. "We will take you to our camp," Chief Standing Bear said. "You will rest there tonight and eat good food. Tomorrow we will talk about other things." The group of Apache warriors rode slowly across the desert with Samuel in the middle. Samuel felt safe riding with these men. He could see that they were skilled riders who knew the desert very well. As they rode, Chief Standing Bear told Samuel more about Running Wolf's grandmother. Her name had been Silver Moon, and she had been the wisest woman in their tribe. Silver Moon had lived for 87 years and had seen many changes in the Apache way of life. Silver Moon raised Running Wolf after his parents died in a sickness, Chief Standing Bear explained. Running Wolf loved her more than anyone in the world. When she became sick, he was desperate to be with her. Samuel listened as Chief Standing Bear talked about Silver Moon's life. She had been a medicine woman who helped heal sick people. She had also been a keeper of the old Apache stories and traditions. When Silver Moon died, a great deal of wisdom had died with her. "But because of you, Silver Moon did not die alone," Chief Standing Bear said. Running Wolf was able to hold her hand and sing the old songs to help her spirit find peace. "This gift you gave to our family can never be forgotten." After 2 hours of riding, the group reached the Apache camp. Samuel saw many teepees arranged in a circle around a large fire. Women were cooking food and children were playing games. When the people saw Chief Standing Bear returning with Samuel, they all came out to greet them. Chief Standing Bear spoke to the tribe in Apache language. Samuel could not understand the words, but he could tell that the chief was telling them about Samuel's kindness to Running Wolf. The Apache people listened carefully, and many of them nodded their heads with approval. Running Wolf came running from one of the teepees. When he saw Samuel, his face lit up with joy. Running Wolf grabbed Samuel's hands and spoke quickly in Apache. Then he switched to English. "Samuel, my friend," Running Wolf said with tears in his eyes, "I reached my grandmother in time. She died peacefully knowing that I was there. This is because of your kindness." Samuel climbed down from the pony and hugged Running Wolf. Samuel was happy to see that the young man looked much better than he had 2 days ago. Running Wolf had eaten good food and had been able to rest after his long ride. "I'm glad you were able to be with her," Samuel said. "That is all that matters." An old Apache woman brought Samuel a bowl of stew and some bread made from corn. Samuel realized that he was very hungry. He had not eaten a good meal in 2 days. The stew was delicious and filled with meat and vegetables. As Samuel ate, the Apache people gathered around him. The children stared at him with curiosity. Samuel was probably the first white man many of them had ever seen up close. But Samuel could see that they were not afraid of him. Chief Standing Bear had told them that Samuel was a friend. When Samuel finished eating, Chief Standing Bear asked him to walk away from the camp. They walked to a hill that overlooked a small valley. The valley was green with grass and had a stream running through it. Samuel, Chief Standing Bear said, "What I'm about to tell you must remain a secret. My people have trusted me to share this with you because of what you did for our family." Samuel nodded. He understood that Chief Standing Bear was about to tell him something very important and private. Chief Standing Bear pointed to the mountains that rose beyond the green valley. "In those mountains, my people have known about something for many generations. It is something that white men would find very valuable." Samuel looked at the mountains. They were tall and rocky with deep canyons carved into their sides. Samuel wondered what could be hidden in such wild and dangerous country. "What is in the mountains?" Samuel asked quietly. Chief Standing Bear was silent for a moment. Samuel could see that the chief was thinking carefully about his words. This was clearly a decision that was not easy for him to make. "Silver," Chief Standing Bear said finally. "There are veins of pure silver in those mountains. My grandfather's grandfather found them many years ago. We have kept this secret from all white men because we knew they would take the land from us." Samuel felt his heart begin to beat faster. Silver was one of the most valuable things a person could find. Men had traveled thousands of miles and risked their lives searching for silver deposits like the one Chief Standing Bear was describing. "Why are you telling me this?" Samuel asked. Chief Standing Bear looked directly into Samuel's eyes. "Because you are no longer a white stranger to us. You are Apache family now, and because Silver Moon spoke about you before she died." Samuel felt confused. How could Silver Moon have spoken about him when they had never met? "What did she say?" Samuel asked. Chief Standing Bear smiled slightly. Silver Moon was a medicine woman who could sometimes see things that had not happened yet. Before she died, she told Running Wolf that the kind white man who helped him would bring good fortune to our people. She said that this man could be trusted with our greatest secret. Samuel looked back at the mountains. Somewhere in those rocky peaks was enough silver to make a man rich beyond his wildest dreams, and the Apache were willing to share this secret with him because he had helped one young man reach his dying grandmother. "I do not know what to say," Samuel said honestly. Chief Standing Bear put his hand on Samuel's shoulder. "Say that you will help us," the chief said. "We cannot take the silver from the mountains by ourselves. We do not know how to deal with the white man's laws and business, but we trust you to be fair and honest with us." Samuel realized that Chief Standing Bear was offering him a partnership. The Apache would share their secret silver deposit with him if Samuel would help them navigate the complex world of mining claims and business deals. "You would trust me with something so valuable?" Samuel asked. Chief Standing Bear nodded. "Running Wolf told us about your character. A man who would give his horse to a stranger for $1 is a man who can be trusted with any treasure." Samuel looked at the mountains again. His life was about to change in ways he never could have imagined, all because he had chosen to help a young Apache man in need. Samuel spent the night in the Apache camp thinking about Chief Standing Bear's offer. He lay on a soft buffalo hide bed looking up at the stars. Samuel had never been offered such an opportunity in his entire life. The silver in the mountains could make him wealthy beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. But Samuel also understood the great responsibility that came with this trust. The Apache people were sharing their most precious secret with him. They were trusting him to be fair and honest in all their business dealings. Samuel knew that many white men would cheat the Apache and take all the silver for themselves. When morning came, Chief Standing Bear approached Samuel with two other Apache men. One was an elderly medicine man named Gray Eagle. The other was a younger warrior named Swift Arrow who spoke very good English. "Have you made your decision?" Chief Standing Bear asked Samuel. Samuel stood up and looked at the three Apache men. "Yes," Samuel said. "I will help you, but only if we can be equal partners. I will not take more than my fair share of anything we find." Chief Standing Bear smiled and nodded. "This is exactly what Silver Moon said you would say. She told Running Wolf that the kind stranger would be more interested in fairness than in getting rich quickly." Swift Arrow stepped forward and spoke to Samuel in clear English. "I have been to the white man's towns many times. I understand your laws about mining claims and land ownership. I will help you with the business arrangements." Samuel felt relieved. He had been worried about the complicated legal issues involved in mining operations. Having Swift Arrow to help would make everything much easier. Chief Standing Bear led Samuel and the others to horses that were already prepared for travel. "Today we will show you the silver," the chief said. "Then you can decide how to proceed." The group rode for 3 hours through difficult mountain terrain. They followed narrow paths that wound between tall rock formations and deep canyons. Samuel realized that no white man would ever find this place by accident. The Apache had kept their secret safe by choosing a location that was almost impossible to reach. Finally, they stopped at the entrance to a small canyon that was hidden behind several large boulders. Chief Standing Bear dismounted and moved one of the boulders aside. Behind it was a narrow opening that led into the canyon. "Follow me," Chief Standing Bear said. Samuel and the others led their horses through the opening into the hidden canyon. What Samuel saw inside made his breath catch in his throat. The walls of the canyon were streaked with veins of pure silver that sparkled in the sunlight. Samuel had never seen anything so beautiful or valuable in his life. "My ancestors found this place over 100 years ago," Chief Standing Bear explained. "We have taken only small amounts of silver when we needed it for trading. Most of it remains untouched." Gray Eagle walked to one of the silver veins and broke off a small piece with his knife. He handed the silver to Samuel. The metal was heavy and pure. Samuel estimated that this one small piece would be worth several dollars. "There is enough silver here to supply a mining operation for many years," Swift Arrow said. "But we will need proper equipment and workers to extract it safely." Samuel walked around the canyon examining the silver deposits. He had some knowledge of mining from his trading business. He knew that they would need to hire experienced miners and buy expensive equipment. They would also need to build roads to transport the silver to market. "This will require a great deal of money to start," Samuel told the Apache men. "More money than I have." Chief Standing Bear nodded. "We understand this. That is why we need your help to find investors and business partners. We cannot do this alone." Samuel spent the rest of the day in the canyon with the Apache men planning their mining operation. Swift Arrow had brought paper and pencils, and they drew maps and made lists of everything they would need. By evening, they had developed a plan. Samuel would travel to Tucson and Phoenix to find investors who would provide money for the mining operation. In exchange, the investors would receive a share of the profits. Samuel would oversee the business side of the operation, while the Apache men would provide the land and help with the labor. "We will split all profits equally," Samuel said. "1/3 will go to your tribe, 1/3 will go to me, and 1/3 will go to the investors." Chief Standing Bear and the other Apache men discussed this arrangement in their own language for several minutes. Then Chief Standing Bear spoke to Samuel. "This is fair and generous," the chief said. "We agree to these terms." The next morning, Samuel prepared to leave the Apache camp and begin his new life as a mining businessman. Running Wolf came to say goodbye and gave Samuel another gift. "This belonged to my grandmother, Silver Moon," Running Wolf said. He handed Samuel a small silver bracelet that was decorated with turquoise stones. "She wanted you to have it as a reminder of how one act of kindness can change many lives." Samuel put the bracelet in his pocket next to the carved wolf stone. These gifts from the Apache people meant more to him than all the silver in the mountains. 6 months later, Samuel's life had changed completely. He had found investors in Phoenix who were excited about the silver mining opportunity. The mining operation was running smoothly and producing large amounts of high-quality silver. Samuel built a house near the Apache camp and became a permanent member of their community. He married an Apache woman named Morningstar, who was Chief Standing Bear's daughter. Samuel learned to speak Apache language and adopted many of their customs and traditions. The silver mine made Samuel wealthy, but more importantly, it provided prosperity for the entire Apache tribe. They used their profits to buy better food and supplies for their people. They also used the money to hire lawyers who helped protect their land rights from other white settlers. Samuel never forgot that his good fortune had started with a simple act of kindness. Every month he would visit the spot where he had first met Running Wolf. Samuel would sit by a small fire and remember the night when he gave up his horse for $1. Running Wolf grew up to become a respected leader in the Apache community. He often told the story of Samuel's kindness to the young people in the tribe. "Remember," Running Wolf would say, "that the greatest treasures in life come not from taking but from giving." Samuel lived happily with the Apache people for the rest of his life. He became known throughout Arizona as a fair and honest businessman who always kept his word. But Samuel's greatest pride was not his wealth or his reputation. His greatest pride was knowing that he had helped preserve the Apache way of life for future generations. Years later, when people asked Samuel about the secret to his success, He would always give the same answer. The best investment you can make, Samuel would say, is an investment in kindness. Money and silver will not last forever, but good deeds create fortune that never ends.